comes, something happens in Wall Street. This is capitalism. A crash in Wall Street destroys the interior villages of Ganjam district. If you look at the same period, from Kalahandi, there used to be 5 buses to Raipur. 5 buses a day to Raipur in mid-90s. Today, there are 16 buses a day from Kalahandi to Raipur. You can look at these journeys between Pudukkottai and Madurai. You can look at these journeys in Kerala. You can look at it in Anantapur, where a single bus stand takes workers to 84 different destinations in the country. Mass migrations go hand in hand with mass distress. But let's come back to the farm crisis. 20 years of neoliberal economic policy, which is to cut down the farming by the small farmer and capture farming for the corporate sector. The agrarian crisis can be described in 5 words. The drive towards corporate farming. Corporate colonization of Indian agriculture. This is your agrarian crisis. Making life impossible for the smallholder in the explosion of input costs and the availability of inputs, in access to the market, in access to bank credit. If you look at the new figures on bank credit, this is a government that can't open its mouth without saying financial inclusion, inclusive growth. What does the RBI's data on credit show? What does the NSS data on credit show? It shows that Dalits and Adivasis have much less access to formal credit from banks today than they did 20 years ago. Dalit and Adivasi access to formal credit is much less in 2012 than it was 20 years ago. But there is other fascinating thing coming out of the credit. If you look, in fact, it was a young professor from this state, R. Ramakumar, who did a study which showed, he is working in Tata Institute of Social Sciences. His study, and also the study of Dr. Pallavi Chauhan, shows that between 2001 and 2007, the number of small loans in agriculture fell by more than half. That is, loans of 50,000 rupees or less collapsed. Who takes loans of 50,000 or less? Small farmer. Loans of 10 to 25 crores doubled. How many farmers do you know who take loans of 25 crores? I know. His name is Mukesh Ambani. Amitabh Bachchan is registered in Bombay, has given his registration as a farmer. Yeah, he's a farmer in UP. He's got a certificate from the Tehsil to show that he's a farmer. Last year and year before last, Frontline had an analysis by Ramakumar and Pallavi Chauhan of how Maharashtra's agricultural credit is divided. 53% of what we call agricultural credit was disbursed not in the villages, not in the rural areas. It was disbursed in urban and metro branches. Half of it was disbursed in Mumbai, Pune and Nashik. 40% was disbursed in bank branches in Mumbai. All those struggling farmers of Malabar Hill, the Mukesh Ambanis, the Anil Ambani, this is where the agricultural credit is going, because the government of India has redefined what is agriculture, what is a farmer, what is credit, what is indirect finance, what is direct finance. Every year, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee and Mr. Chidambaram have changed the definition. So today you have this gigantic crisis in credit for the small farmer, for Dalits and Adivasis. At the end of it, we locked our small farmers in Kerala into the volatility of global prices on coffee, pepper, everywhere. We smashed down the boards, we smashed down the government intervention in the prices, and thousands of Kerala farmers committed suicide. 11,000 of them in 1 decade. Okay. Now, look at what has happened nationally. As we made farming impossible for the small farmer, between 1995 and 2011, 2 lakh 71,000 farmers have committed suicide. Now, please understand that that is a huge underestimate. It is a huge underestimate because mostly women farmers are not counted. They see the woman as a farmer's wife because the land is not in her name. I have had this fight with many tehsildars. Why have you not included her in the list of farmer suicide? Show me the land in her name. She is not a farmer. Maharashtra has created a category of suicides. After farmer suicides, they have a new category. Farmers' relatives suicides. Next, they will bring farmers' friends also. After all this mischief, Dalits and Adivasis never figure in the list because their title to land is not clear ever. Okay? After all this mischief, the figure shows 2,71,000. Nominally, the figure is declining. Why is the figure declining? Because last year, Chhattisgarh got angry with me, got angry with National Crime Records Bureau, got angry with the Bureau for the figure and got angry with me for writing about it. So Chhattisgarh has been a pioneer in many things in this country. For 2011, they declared 0 farmer suicides. How many farmer suicides did they have in the last 5 years? 7,700. On average, they were having 1,666 suicides a year for previous 5 years, but last year they had 0. So you can get a decline. You can redefine who a farmer is. Government of Maharashtra has already done that. So, but look at the figures. This 2,71,000 farm suicides is divided, Kerala is also high, is divided between 2 periods. You can take the first 8 years, 1995 to 2002. You can take the second 9 years, 2003 to 2011, and see, is it getting worse or is it getting better? It is getting very much worse. In the first, the average number of deaths per year in the last 9 years has gone up by 1,500 compared to the previous 8 years. So it is climbing. It is also spreading to new states. 90% of those who commit suicide are cash crop farmers. Very few food crop farmers commit suicide. However, it is now in eastern Vidarbha spreading to the food crop producers. Why are these people committing suicide? There have been 13 inquiry commissions in Maharashtra, to find out why they are killing themselves. Actually, you don't need to do that. The farmers are writing suicide notes. You will weep if you read the suicide note of the Marathi farmer in Vidarbha. The last such suicide note came from Ramachandra Ratan Rao. I wept in his house when I saw his note, even though before I could read it, because on what he wrote his suicide note. You see, if you are a small person in an Indian village, your life is a struggle for authentication. You need the tehsildar signature on this document. You need the Upakosh tehsildar signature on that document. You need your name on the bill from the water department. You need notary public's seal and stamp on stamped paper. You all know it. Everything you do, you have to get on revenue stamped paper. Ramachandra Ratan Rao wrote his suicide note on 100 rupees stamped revenue paper because he wanted to be taken seriously. He felt the only way people will take you seriously is when you give a quasi-judicial document called revenue stamp paper or non-judicial stamp paper. He gave that, he wrote, and another thing, unique in the farm suicides, particularly in Vidarbha, in fact I think only in Vidarbha, the suicide notes are not addressed to their loved ones. The suicide notes are not addressed to the wife or the children. The suicide notes are addressed to the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister and the Chief Minister and the Finance Minister of the state. Ramachandra Ratan Rao's paper goes in that order from the Prime Minister to the Jilla Parishad and the Panchayat leaders. He explains how you have made life hell for us with your credit practices and the harassment of your banks. Dalits and Adivasis are not getting anything from the banks. They have to go 100% to the money lenders. Rameshwar Tuchankar writes a detail. He wrote a letter. Ramakrishna Lokar, when he committed suicide, he addressed his note to Manmohan Singh. In 2006, after many of us covered the farm suicides of Vidarbha in Frontline in the Hindu, Manmohan Singh came to Vidarbha. 2 days, 1 week after he left, Ramakrishna Lokar in his suicide note said, "Dear Prime Minister, after you came and promised us to change things for better, I thought I would be treated with a little respect and dignity at the bank the next time I go. But they treated me like dirt, the same way they always behaved with me." Now please understand that while it's impossible for these guys to get credit, any rich person can get plenty of credit from these banks. In 2010, Aurangabad set a world record. Did you see it on television? A small group of vyapar, a small group of businessmen purchased 150 Mercedes Benz at one shot. Do you remember? Do you remember? Have you seen that on television? A group of businessmen in a small town called Aurangabad, small city called Aurangabad, whose per capita income is 1/3 of Mumbai, they bought 150 Mercedes Benz, 66 crores. You know how much? Where did the money come from? State Bank of India, Aurangabad. What is the interest rate on that loan? 7%. So I went to State Bank of India, Aurangabad. I said, if I want to buy a tractor and I need 6 lakhs from you, what is the interest rate? 14%. 7% for Mercedes Benz. For tractor, first 3 lakhs, 13.75%, 13%. Next 1 lakh, 13.25%. 6 lakhs, 14%. 66 crores, 7% for the Mercedes Benz. Then a third suicide note of Rameshwar Tuchankar in Yavatmal. He writes, if you read Rameshwar Tuchankar's suicide note, which was translated for me because I can't read Marathi, it was almost as if it was written by Charles Dickens on the state of usury, on the state of exploitation, on the state of money lending. Why do we need any bloody inquiry commission when the farmers are telling you what is done? There have been many inquiry commissions. There has been the National Commission of Farmers report, main author being Professor N.S. Swaminathan. Mr. Sharad Pawar has not once spoken to Dr. Swaminathan since that report was given. He has thrown that report in the corner. There has never been a full-fledged discussion of the report in Parliament, 4 volumes of it. This is the kind of distress, the huge problems that are going. So we are looking at 1 million stories in the predicament of the rural. We are looking at corporate domination of agriculture. We are looking at 7.5 million people leaving at the rate of 2,000 a day from agriculture. Between 91 and 2001, the debt, the indebtedness of the Indian peasantry doubled. We are now finding out that the so-called loan waiver did not go to the small farmer at all. Here is another thing. Every year, routinely, the nationalized banks write off the debts of the richest people in this country. You see, when the rich wreck something, even when they destroy something, it is called an asset. Non-performing asset. Even when they wreck the bloody economy, it is called a non-performing asset. If a poor fellow takes 5 rupees, that is a loan, that is a debt. But if he is a rich man and he wastes 5 crores, that is non-performing asset. Every year, tens of thousands of crores of non-performing assets are written off by the Indian banks. But farmers have been jailed for debt. In Andhra Pradesh, we did several stories in the Hindu until those farmers were released. What was the debt? 80,000 rupees they went to debt. Do you know that the laws of this country still have British colonialism laws, where in many states in this country, a farmer jailed for debt, his cost in the prison, he has to pay that also. The Agricultural Standing Committee of Parliament in 2008 said this is the most barbaric and primitive practice still on the statute books of this country, because you have an entirely different law for poor people, for the lower classes, as from what you do for the living. As a result of this breakdown of credit, new classes of money lenders have come. The new money lenders are sitting in your Krishi Kendras. They're sitting in the shops that are selling pesticide. They are the agents and dalals of Monsanto and Cargill. They are the new source of accumulation of capital in the countryside. They will be your MLAs, MPs and ministers in the coming decade. Okay. So inequality has hit. The great feature of our last 20 years has been the spectacular rise of inequality and indebtedness in the present day. I come to my last section. Just look at the fights that are going on in the countryside over land. I already told you, like for instance, Moscow. But you can look at Kalina. You can look at Gopalpur. In Gopalpur, 15 years ago, the Tatas grabbed land. The struggle against it was headed by Narayan Reddy of the CPI in those days, MLA in those days. He lives in the courts these days with fake cases over his name. In Gopalpur, the land was forcibly taken, saying we are going, Tatas will build a steel plant here in Gopalpur, irrigated land, extremely fertile land. It was grabbed physically and a promise of 1 lakh per acre was given. Some villages refused to take it, they were smashed, they did not get the compensation, the land was taken. 15 years later, there is no steel plant, there is no construction on the site. Do you know what the government has allowed Tatas to do? The site that was physically forcibly acquired for steel plant, they have allowed Tatas to convert it into an SEZ and charge rent for other companies and factories to put up